This is The First Century, a podcast devoted to stories from that influential period of history including Rome, Judea, Christianity, and more. I'm your host, Dr. Brian Schmisek. Get ready to go back in time and enter a world before computers, the stagecoach, the printing press, or even stirrups had been invented for horses. We're about to enter the first century. Episode 26, The Recovery and Subsequent Madness of Caligula. After a period of several weeks of severe illness, Gaius ultimately began to recover. He learned that during his illness, his teenage cousin and named heir, Gemellus, had been representing him for official duties, whereas his uncle, Claudius, represented him at the games. Something about Gemellus stepping in raised Gaius's ire. Plus, others began to whisper that Gemellus was actually hoping to become emperor and had wished for Gaius to die from his illness. Gaius decided to end the matter quickly and ordered the 18-year-old Gemellus to commit suicide under the watchful eye of the Praetorian Guard. When they came to Gemellus with that command, he claimed not to know how to kill himself with a sword, so the soldiers performed that duty for him. Gaius did not inform the Senate of Gemellus's demise, but let the word filter through as it did. Gaius had now consolidated power completely, as Gemellus, grandson of Tiberius, was no longer a threat, and Gemellus had been the only reasonable contender for the principate, even enjoying the support and friendship of Aulus Avilius Flaccus, prefect of Egypt. Claudius was still a stammering, drooling, limping fool. Augustus's concerns about him decades earlier were still warranted. As an uncle, Claudius was fine to have around, but nobody would mistake him for an emperor wannabe. Now fully recovered, Gaius learned that Publius Afranius Potitus had made an oath offering his own life in exchange for Gaius if only Gaius would be made better. So now Gaius compelled him to commit suicide, so as not to bring down the wrath of the gods on account of perjury. Likewise, Gaius heard of the oath that Antonius Secundus made to fight as a gladiator, and so Gaius made Secundus fight as a gladiator in accordance with that promise. Gaius was also annoyed by his father-in-law, Marcus Junius Silanus. Though Junia had died with child earlier, Marcus Junius Silanus continued to treat Gaius as a son. Silanus was a respected senator and had served as Suffolk consul in 15. Under Tiberius, he was given the privilege of voting first in the Senate. In fact, Tiberius had such respect for Silanus that if ever there was a case that Silanus had decided that came to Tiberius on appeal, Tiberius refused to even hear it. He had such confidence in Silanus's actions and decisions. But now, Gaius turned on Silanus. Gaius abrogated the custom of Silanus voting first in the Senate and devised new rules which kept that privilege from Silanus. In November of 37, Gaius persuaded his brother-in-law, Lucius Cassius Longinus, to divorce the childless Drusilla so she could marry Marcus Aemilius Lepidus, Gaius's best friend. Longinus obliged, and Gaius named Lepidus as his heir. In another spate of matchmaking, Gaius also decided to take a new wife for himself, Cornelia or Estilla. And take her he did. Cornelia was celebrating her betrothal to Gaius Calpurnius Piso, a handsome ladies' man and a wealthy man about town. Piso's grandfather was the one who had been accused of poisoning Germanicus decades earlier, and his grandfather's father had opposed the first triumvirate and also opposed Julius Caesar. At the time of Julius Caesar, there was another branch of the same family, represented by Lucius Calpurnius Piso Caesoninus, who served as consul in 58 BCE, and whose daughter Calpurnia married Julius Caesar. That Piso Caesoninus, had an incredible villa at Pompeii that was still enjoyed by his descendants. So, Gaius Calpurnius Piso came from one of Rome's most ancient and prestigious senatorial families. He wrote poetry, sang, and was an outstanding dinner party guest. And he played a good game of latroculi, which was a Roman game of strategy, in which two players maneuvered opposing armies of pieces across a grid, seeking to immobilize and capture the enemy through encirclement. It emphasized forethought, positional awareness, and tactical restraint rather than chance. It was one of the Roman world's most intellectually demanding and culturally resonant pastimes, a miniature war fought on a board. Gaius Calpurnius Piso also had an exceptional villa at Baiae, and now he was about to have a beautiful wife. The princeps then issued a proclamation saying that he had taken a wife as Romulus and Augustus had, by which he meant he took a wife from someone else's marriage. Piso was forced to let the princeps take his bride. Silanus felt the political winds shifting and nobly committed suicide. And it was only a few months later that the princeps grew tired of Cornelia and exiled her and Piso to an island, claiming that both Cornelia and Piso had been engaging in a clandestine affair the entire time. Macro continued to advise Gaius and help him act as a fine emperor. He felt as though he could speak freely with Gaius, as he had helped him secure the throne and had only his best interests at heart. For example, at times when Gaius would fall asleep at various entertainment events, Macro would nudge him awake and exhort him to pay attention, for one who sleeps in such a public setting is an easy object of scorn. Or, when Gaius might become excited by a particular dancer to the point of joining her in a dance, Macro would encourage him to keep his emotions in check, as the princeps should not be seen to be subject to such emotions. In a similar way, Gaius could be so moved by a song that he might join in, but again, only earning a soft rebuke from Macro. You should not be like anyone else here, but instead surpass all the others in every action of life, just as you surpass all others in your good fortune. It's reasonable that the ruler of all would be seduced by a song or a dance, but remember, you're the emperor. Upon hearing all of this, Gaius would simply seethe. In Egypt, word came to Flaccus that Gemellus was dead, which only heightened Flaccus's concern for his own well-being, since he had been one of Gemellus's supporters. Some in the city, a group which held animosity toward the Jews, knew that Flaccus was nervous, and so they offered an arrangement. They would support him before the princeps if he would support them in making their life difficult for the Jews in the city. Flaccus agreed, and allowed or even fostered discontent between the Jewish residents and these others in the city. Having earlier declined the Jewish offer to send well wishes to Gaius after his accession, Flaccus was now asked by the Jewish citizens to send a letter to the new emperor wishing him well. Though Flaccus approved, he kept the letter and never actually sent it, and instead he continued to harass the Jewish community in Alexandria. On the 15th of December in 37 CE, about 9 months after the death of Tiberius, the 22-year-old Agrippina the Younger gave birth to a son, who was born Breech, which was an omen of leadership and power in ancient Rome. The timing of the birth, about 9 months after the death of Tiberius, might cause us to think that Tiberius's death made it safe for the couple to produce offspring. With Gaius on the throne, their family was in power, and their enemies were no more. Friends of Domitius, the father, were congratulating him on the birth of the boy, and he responded, quote, that nothing but what was detestable and pernicious to the public could ever be produced of him and Agrippina, end quote. Agrippina asked her brother Gaius what name they should choose for the boy. Gaius glanced around and saw his uncle Claudius, who remained a laughing-stock as he drooled, walked with a limp, and spoke with a speech impediment. In a vain attempt to be funny, Gaius proposed the name Claudius for the newborn. Agrippina was incensed and did not take the joke well. There was no way this boy would carry the name of Claudius. Instead, she chose to name him Lucius Domitius Ahenobarbus, after the boy's father. Years later, the boy's name would be changed to Nero. Over the winter of 37-38, Gaius began to encourage Herod Agrippa to visit his kingdom, even advising him on which way he should go to Judea. He told him that rather than go from Brundisium to Syria, it would be better to wait for the Etesian winds, those from the Aegean Sea, which are prominent around mid-May to mid-September, and go the shorter route from Puteoli, near modern-day Naples, with a stop in Alexandria, Egypt. Gaius, being a fan of chariot races, said that some of the highly skilled pilots managed their ships with the Etesian winds as charioteers manage racehorses. Agrippa prudently took the advice of his friend and emperor, even though he did not want to visit or much less stay in Alexandria. Augustus had thought Claudius, Gaius's uncle, was not a good judge of character, and had made bad choices for friends. In the year 38, Claudius married Messalina. She was about 18 years old, whereas Claudius was about 48. Messalina came from a prominent family. Her father was Valerius Messala Barbatos, a consul and loyal member of Gaius's supporters. Messalina's mother, Domitia Lepida, was the daughter of Lucius Domitius Ahenobarbus and Antonia the Elder, herself the elder daughter of Octavia by her marriage to Mark Antony. Domitia had two siblings, Gnaeus Domitius Ahenobarbus, who would eventually marry Agrippina and father Nero, and Domitia. Claudius still stuttered and drooled. Gaius continued to mock him, denigrate him, and thoroughly humiliate him. Claudius took it in stride, and he also took to drink. With his illness fading into mere memory, Gaius began to grow tired of Macro and his paternalistic ways. Whenever Macro approached, Gaius would say, "Don't smile, don't look downcast. Here comes the monitor, the stickler for straight speaking. He's now taken it upon himself to tutor a fully grown man, an emperor no less. And at the very moment when those who had guided him since childhood have been dismissed and pushed aside." End quote. Gaius decided to rid himself of Macro and Macro's wife Ennia, with whom he had had an affair while Tiberius was princeps and to whom he had promised marriage. So Gaius told Macro that he was going to name him governor of Egypt. Macro and Ennia were pleased with their appointment. Their plan, hatched when Tiberius was princeps, was reaching fruition. The affair with Gaius had been worth it. Egypt was the most prominent post Macro could ever hope to obtain. The couple proudly went to Ostia to board the ship that would take them to Alexandria. But when they arrived, Macro was suddenly arrested and stripped of his office. At 59 years of age, he and his wife Ennia committed suicide before they could face a worse fate. In his will, Macro left enough money to provide for the construction of an amphitheater in his hometown of Alba Fucens in Abruzzo, and that can still be seen today. In his place as Praetorian Guard, Gaius appointed Cassius Chaerea, that high-spirited young soldier who supported Germanicus in putting down the mutiny after Augustus' death in the year 14. Chaerea was proud to serve Germanicus' son, Gaius. Next time, we'll hear about Caligula's ingenuity but extravagance in fulfilling an astrologer's prophecy, and how Herod Agrippa's stop in Alexandria becomes important in the eventual downfall of Flaccus, governor of Egypt.